he was notified, and requirements of posting notices have been met. Would please stand with me for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Treasurer call roll.
Franklin here. Cunningham here. Doyle here. Regoso. Michael. Wilson here. Smith here. Starr here. Grant here. We have one.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we need to go into executive session this evening to explain a couple of matters. So, with that, an hour, with that, make a motion to move into executive session at 6:02. Second. All those in favor?
Second.
All in favor? I apologize to the members of the public running over. We actually currently changing the format and moving forward for our executive session to avoid situations like this. For future meeting 6 o'clock and handling any executive matters, and then won't be taking any action on anything until 7 o'clock. That might be regular board meeting will start at 7 o'clock. So with that, move on with our agenda this evening. First item listed on the presentations is our self-assessment for Dick, Mr. Peters. Without further ado, if you'd like to go ahead and run us with that information.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grant. Pleasure to come up to you in front of you this evening to report the self-assessment scores for each of our schools within the district. And this is representing last academic year, so the 23 through 24 year. These self-assessments have been performed by our school principals, the school safety specialists, our counselors, and also members of the school safety teams. We also want to make note that starting last year, we do have a new section that was added to the self-assessment, and this was to include how many times a preliminary determination was made. So where we had a report of potential hit, principal counsel was able to sort through it and determine that it was more of a code of conduct or did not meet the definition for hit preliminarily. So this way we could proceed with a code of conduct issue. As far as our preliminary determinations, how many times this occurred? 0 times at Janvier School, 9 times at Main Road School, and 28 times at the Ritter School. And all of those determinations were passed through both the principal of each of those schools as well as the superintendent. As far as the self-assessment, the state has us examine really how we are compliant to the Anti-Bullying Bill of Rights Act and the actual policy that we have here within our school district on 8 core elements. There is a total maximum score of 78 points, and we rate ourselves on a 3-point scale. 2 points basically meaning that we are meeting the expectations. 3 means basically that you are exceeding those expectations. Looking at the scores, Janvier score went up by 1 point. They are at a 73. Main Road School remained consistent with a score of 76. And Ritter School remained consistent with a score of 77. Once again, those scores are out of 78 possible points. As far as some areas of strength, all of the schools included all the possible points regarding the implementation of our HIT program, really a lot of the compliance aspects as far as following policy, following the regulations that have been set forth by the State Department of Education that would include the investigation procedures and reporting procedures for HIT. Some weaknesses that we could improve upon would be the assessment of our program and also the documentation of looking at patterns within some of the schools.
Any questions, sir, Mr. Peters?
Any board member questions? Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Next item on our agenda this evening is our strategic plan update. Our strategic plan update on curriculum instruction by Mrs. Dalton.
Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. You know, I use the microphone, you speak loud.
No, I talk
Hear
about
that,
it. I'm gonna go from the strategic plan to the student achievement presentation, if that's okay. I really don't have anything new to report for the strategic plan. I reported to you guys in June, and we have met all of our goals. The only thing we have lingering out there is working with Lincoln. For me to be able to pull the data in terms of how long students have been in our district. So that is something that we're still working on them. For me to be able to do, but other than that, we met all of our other goals for the strategic plan. So you guys got this presentation last week, so I'll do things a little bit different. Hopefully you had time to look it over. Usually I go through every single slide, like a pretty much in-depth review of the data, but since you've had it for a while, I'll be a little bit more brief with each of the slides and the data, and then ask any questions that you have. So I have a theme tonight, which is pretty much like I'm really happy to report the data that I'm reporting to you, and it's in a positive direction, and there's been a lot of growth, and there's definitely been some places where we've met that we haven't met before. So it's really exciting to come to you with this information. I'm going to be reporting now on the NJSLA results for the 23-24 school year for both ELA and math and science, all three, ELA, math, and science, as well as our fall iReady data for reading and mathematics. This chart actually just came out from the state for our state performance reports. All the places that is highlighted is where we met proficiency for language arts. So we met proficiency across the district. At Ritter, for all of our students, our Hispanic students, white students, economically disadvantaged students, and at Main Road for our Black and African American students, as well as our Hispanic students. Before we had no yellow highlighted up there that we met for ELA proficiency. For our ELA growth, it's easier to tell you where we didn't meet, but we actually exceeded some of the growth expectations. So for 8 out of 14 of the subgroups, we exceeded the growth expectations, and we met in 6 out of the 14 subgroups. There was only 2 subgroups that we did not meet for ELA growth at Main Road, and that was economically disadvantaged and students with disabilities. For the first time, I think ever, since I've been standing up here to give this presentation to you, majority of our students are now falling in that meeting bar, that light green bar meeting. Years past, I was showing you that it was approaching. It was the orange bar that was higher. And right now, across the board at all the grade levels, the percentages for students meeting proficiency on the ELA, NJSLA are falling in that meeting category. This is us compared to the state. At the meeting level, we outperformed the state in grades 5 and 6. And we are comparable with just a few percentages off in grades 3 and 4. For our racial subgroups, all of them also have the highest bar with the percentage of students in that meeting area. This is for the last 3 years for our subgroups for race. And you can see the percentage of students meeting proficiency on NJSLA really increased this past year across the board. Our black students, Hispanic students, multiple races, and our white students, every single one of them showed a giant increase with meeting proficiency on NJSLA ELA. Same for our female students and our male students. There's that trend, that increasing trend every single year for the last 3 years with a big change for this year. And in looking at our program populations, if you'll notice, it's the first time ever we've had free and reduced lunch kids meet proficiency on the NJSLA. That's why there's no other bars. So for the last 2 years, there was no free and reduced lunch students meeting proficiency. Our 504 students, there's a big increase in the percentage of students being proficient. There was also an increase in the number of students that have a 504 plan. So we did go from 29 students last year having a 504 plan to 42 students this past year. So it's an increase of 13 students in that subcategory. Also, in special ed, you'll see 2 years ago there wasn't anybody there, and now we have 15% of the special ed students that scored proficient on the NJSLA, and then our gen ed population after that. This is each grade level for the last 5 years, but I take a look at it a little bit differently, and I like to look at the cohorts of students. So that's kind of why here, if you follow these arrows back, this 6th grade group are the current 7th graders at Delphi. So they were with us last year, and when they started with us in 3rd grade, their growth went from 35% reading proficiency, and then in 4th grade, 37, in 5th grade, 44, and by the time they left us in 6th grade, 60% of them were reading proficiency on the NJSLA. And then if you look at the sun here and follow that backwards, the sun is our current 6th graders, so they were in 5th grade last year. In 3rd grade, they went from 25% proficient to 37% proficient to 53% proficient. I also have the triangle, which would be the current 5th graders, which was last year's 4th graders, so you could look and see how that cohort of students is growing over time. In grades 3 through 5, this is the subtest data for the last 5 years for NJSLA. We improved in all subtests for reading, writing, informational texts, and then conventions was still our weakest area in writing. And we surpassed our proficiency rates from 17, 18 in vocabulary. And that's a really big success for us because vocabulary has always been an area of focus. 6th grade is reported separately only because 6th grade is considered to be middle school. If you take a look at the 6th grade, they had tremendous growth. I am so excited about their data. They made significant progress in all subtests except for the vocabulary subtest. They surpassed proficiency levels from the 17-18 school year in all subtests except for vocabulary, but they're only 2% away from being back to where we were prior to COVID. So some key takeaways from NJSLA: majority of the students being in that median level, improved in all subtest areas in reading and writing. In vocabulary, we surpassed our pre-COVID proficiencies. Consistent growth across all subgroups for students meeting and exceeding on NJSLA. Our 5-year trend data, our 3rd and 4th grade is still an area of focus to have more students meeting proficiency. 5th and 6th grade has made major improvements and is trending upwards, and 6th grade has had tremendous growth in informational, literary text, and writing as well. I'm not going to read every single one of these, but digging deeper into the data and looking at the evidence statements, we can dive into the types of questions where students did really well, and the types of questions where we need to focus, and even go as far into some of the standards. So for each of the grade levels, we have celebrations on where they did well, and we have focus areas. And this is all going out to the staff as well for presentations at faculty meetings, and we're talking about where would we put these types of things in the curriculum, and how are we, especially for the focus areas, how are we making sure that we are spending more time in these areas, and why do we think that we're not doing it as well. In math, you'll notice there's not as much highlighting in the math proficiency. There's only one subgroup for the district level that met math proficiency expectations for the state, and that is 2 or more races. And when you look at our math growth, this has always been our history. We grow a lot in math. We grow a lot across the board. Every subtest area except for 2 at Main Road, the same 2 as ELA, are economically disadvantaged, and our special ed students. If you are to take a look at the light green and the dark green together, the percentages will be higher than looking at the approaching, which is that orange category. So the majority of our students falling in that orange category, which you saw when you've seen in our ready data in the past, being that 1 level below. When you're comparing us to the state, we are pretty comparable across all grade levels exactly with the state. We outperformed the state in grades 5 and 6, and we were off within a couple percentages in grades 3 and 4. So for our racial subgroups, there was a dip in the percentage of students, Black and African American, that met and exceeded on the state test. Hispanic had a little dip. Our multiple races and our white students had an increase. Female versus male, not female versus male, but female and male still has a steady increase for the last 3 years, both there. And again, free and reduced lunch for the first time, having 24% of our free and reduced lunch students meeting on the NJSLA. This 504 students, a big jump there. Special ed is back on the board, and our gen ed population showing an increase as well. For math, this is the same idea as it was for ELA. Following, this is the current 7th graders where they were in 6th grade. In 3rd grade, they started at 37% of them being proficient. In 4th grade, it was up to 38. In 5th grade, it was 33. In 6th grade was 42% of them when they left us. And then the sun would be the current 6th graders. And when they started, they were at 33%. In 4th grade, went to 43%. And in 5th grade, went back down to 39%. This is the subtest data. So for grade 6, grades 3 through 5, sorry. We increased in all of the subtest areas except for modeling and application. And we surpassed proficiency levels for the 17-18 school year in additional and supporting content and expressing mathematical reasoning. And our major content area is on an upward trajectory. For grade 6, we increased or remained relatively the same in additional supporting, major content, modeling, and application, and we had a little decrease in expressing mathematical reasoning. Here, all of our takeaways from NJSLA and our celebrations, digging deep into the standards, where did we do well in NJSLA, what the 5-year trend looks at, as well as the focus areas, basically being more in math, the type of questions that are being asked. The type 2 and type 3 are your open-ended type questions where they are actually having to write to explain their thinking and how they solve problems. In science, you will see here that majority of our students fell within the near proficiency, that yellow bar, which has been historically about where we've been. And when you look at us compared to the state, say the majority of the students in the state at the bottom, we're in the yellow as well. I always like to point out that our red is lower than the state's red, so that's always a good thing. And by race, for the last 3 years, our Hispanic students, multiple races, and white students have kind of been up and down for the last 3 years with the science assessment. Female and male, the last 4 years are there for you to take a look at. And then for the first time again, our free and reduced lunch students, there were 16% of them that scored proficient. Special ed, we've been relatively the same, around that 9%, and gen ed hovers for the last 2 years around the 30%. This is 5th grade for the last 4 years with science, where we've hovered, minus 3 years ago, where we've been hovering around 25% of the students being proficient. Taking a look at the subtest areas, we have significantly increased in all subtests over the last 3 years. Our strongest subtests are critiquing practices, earth and space science, sense-making practices, and physical science. Our areas of focus are investigating practices and life science. Our key takeaways, this is just summarizing everything that I just told you. And we're going to move to iReady rating for the fall. This is our district compared to New Jersey, which is right next to us. Here's us, circled. Here's the state of New Jersey. Here's the national, all the students in the nation that took the iReady assessment, and then the national norms from fall 22 and 23. We have less students at the 2 or more grade levels below than they do at the state or in the nation. And we're pretty similar when it comes to the early mid-on grade level as well as 1 grade level below. And then this is us the last 3 years. I circled the 1 for this year, and we're relatively, every fall we kind of start off in the same exact place where we were as well as the state. This is proficiency on the NJSLA. So according to iReady, the projected proficiency right now based on our scores, if our students all met their typical growth, then we would look at like this purple percentages. That would be the percentages that we're looking at for students to be proficient on NJSLA for language arts. This next chart is if all the students met their stretch growth, then this is the projected proficiency looking at that darker purple at the top. For ELA, it covers between 50% and 70% of the students, depending on the grade level, being proficient on NJSLA. iReady Math, this is the same thing. I circled us in comparison to the state and the nation and the national norm. Again, we have less red, so we have less students in 2 or more grade levels below, and we're relatively close to them with the 1 grade level below as well as early on and mid or above. This is us. We've been relatively stable each fall, the percentage of kids falling in each of these categories. And then here, again, projected proficiency for the NJSLA if the students only met their typical growth. So you can see we're definitely lower than we were in ELA. And if our students are to meet their stretch growth in iReady, this is what we could expect. Now, they will give us projected proficiencies after our students take the winter test as well. And I always report these out to you just so that we can compare later, was the projected proficiency correct on exactly where we were when the scores come in. Plans for improvement. So across the district, building fluency, accuracy, and automaticity in lower grade levels. Increased focus on comprehension strategies for informational text. Math, incorporating consistent opportunities for students to respond in writing to mathematical reasoning type tasks during math instruction. ELA, adapting written communication in response to varying demands of task, audience, purpose, and discipline. A cross-curricular goal is building strong content knowledge and connecting ideas across the disciplines using a variety of resources and media, mostly through writing. And we've implementation of intervention rooms for ELA and math in grades 1 through 6 now. The number of students that we're starting the year in each tier, and these are even the students that entered our district, that transferred into the district, or have transferred into the district since school started. We're constantly updating these because we test them as soon as they come in to see what tier that they need to go in. So these numbers are updated as of yesterday. This is for ELA, and the number of students for tier 2 and tier 3 for math. And the last thing I have for you is our district goal, and this is on the board agenda for approval tonight as well. So the admin team got together, and we want to use iReady, and we want to use our stretch growth. And we weren't really liking the way that the goal was worded before, where it was like 70% of the population each had to meet in the tiers. So there was like two separate goals within the goal. And we felt like if we just did it by the tier, that would be much more clear. So if I'm looking at reading, we're looking at the goals are here in the blue. So tier 1, 52% of the students would meet their stretch goal. In tier 2, we're looking at 48% of the students. And in tier 3, we're looking at 37% of the students. We started this goal in 2021. So our baseline data is here. I mean, we've come a long way with what we're expecting and what we're pushing for our students to meet their stretch birth. And in math, it's the same idea. So our tier 1 students, we're looking at 47%, 44%, and 35%. We took what they actually met in the spring for 23 and 24, and we added 5% to that as our goal. The reason we added the 5% is because when we looked at the last couple of years, the average, if you're averaging all of our tiers together, they were making 4% growth. So we chose 5% for each of the tiers. That's all I have. Questions?
I have questions.
I will take one. Can I go first?
Yeah.
About how many students is 1%? Generally, I know there are varies per grade, but like if we made, 1% or 2%, about how many generally?
Do you mean 1% of the total population?
Yeah, like
It's
per grade.
First grade, we're talking about
65.
So it's about five.
I was just curious. Okay, thank you.
So we have no K kids in tiers yet.
Not yet.
Okay, so they'll be adding this in winter.
They're actually testing now, so they'll be added in December. But we already do have BSI support in there that we haven't had in the past
Right.
from the beginning,
Okay.
that are already supporting the teachers being in classes and have kind of already
Figured out something. Gotcha.
yes.
I guess my question for the goal is, obviously with the tiers, you're gonna have kids going in and out. Tier 1, they go to tier 2, maybe they go up to tier 3, then they go back down to tier 2. How are you assessing this goal when the tiers themselves are fluid? You're not gonna have the same kid, some kids,
Right.
you're not gonna have them in tier 2 all year or tier 3 all year.
So the way we do this goal is we pull the tiers from our ready. It's not the tiers that we create. So how we've always done this goal, I ready will tier the kids based on where they placed in the fall.
So what would be, like how low is a tier 2, how low is a tier 3?
So our tier 2 kids are the early on grade level and the 1 level below.
Okay.
Tier 3 kids are 2 grade levels below or 3 or more. So I might as well just say 2 or more grade levels below are the tier 3.
Okay, so this doesn't coincide to the tier numbers that you just showed us in terms of who's inside.
They did not.
These could, well, I mean, I'm sure they overlap.
They do overlap some, but there's more in tier 2, according to iReady, than what we have, because that big chunk of kids is in that 1 grade level below.
Okay.
So there's definitely a lot more in the tier 2 range than there is when I'm giving you the tiered numbers, because we use multiple sets of data when we're tiering.
Okay. And what's the math, I mean, obviously our math scores are, our progress there isn't what we want it to be. Do we have a math program? Are we utilizing one?
Yeah, we're using classroom math through Curriculum Associates.
And how long have we had that program?
We started it when COVID hit. The first year of it was the year that COVID hit, the same when we did benchmark workshop.
Okay. And can you explain the intervention rooms, how they're run?
Yeah.
That we're implementing, because I know that's part of CUSAC as well.
Yes. So it's different in first. Do you want me to start at the lower or at the upper? Because we've been doing them at the upper longer.
I mean, yeah, just give us an idea of like how, because obviously we're looking for different things to be happening so that we're seeing more growth and whatever it may be. So what, if you want to concisely tell us like how these rooms may be different than a regular, or other first grade room, it's not an intervention room.
Okay. So in grades 2 through 6, we have intervention rooms for math and ELA, where all the tier 2 kids, and I'm going to say most of the grade levels, all tier 2 kids come out of their classroom and go with a BSI teacher for the entire math block or the entire ELA block.
And
our tier twos. So the numbers that I gave you on the charts.
Okay.
And all of the tier 3 students leave and go with, in Jambier and Maynard, it's the reading specialist. And at Ritter, it's one of our ELA coaches that went back into the classroom, does our tier 3 students for ELA. So that it's almost like that pull-out replacement classroom. So they are with the intervention teacher for all of ELA and all of math. Each of those, the math period is run very differently than what you would see in the tier 1 classroom. They have a strategy-based lesson based on a class goal that is by the data. What does everybody in the class need? They have the standards-based lesson, so they're not missing out on the grade level standard. And then they have goal groups, and that's based on their individual goals. In ELA, it's a little different because we have reading, writing, phonics, and word study to do with that. So we have different resources that we're using. But we're always looking to bridge where they need to go. So there's a class goal, there's individual goals, and then there's the standards for that grade level, that lesson.
So if these kids are being pulled out from their entire ELA lesson, is that lesson they're receiving in the tier group a mirror of what is happening in the classroom?
It might not be the same resource, but it's the same standards.
So then my question would be, how are they assessed if they're, because basically they're being taught by a different teacher with different materials in a different way, maybe the same standards, so are their assessments the same?
Their unit assessments, their summative assessments are the same. They have progress monitoring, where we're monitoring them. When they're looking like they are ready to bridge over to the tier 1, then we start a transition with them to be able to go to tier 1. Now in math, we've given a lot of professional development to the math teachers, especially over at Ritter, because a lot of the kids are coming out of the intervention groups. So the classroom teachers needed to know the type of vocabulary, what kinds of strategies were they using that were making them successful. And so that way they have more tools in their toolkit as well. If they have a student that's coming in and might need a little bit of support, and it can be explained in a different way. Now in first grade, we're doing where the intervention teacher is pushing into the classroom for the entire ELA. So it's a co-teaching model, almost like a special ed ICS class. So the BSI teacher comes in for the whole ELA block, a BSI teacher comes in for the whole math block. And because we found with first grade, obviously the foundational skills, there's not much of a gap compared to where they should have been in kindergarten. We start to see that gap get bigger in second grade. So in first grade, we wanted to keep them together. So we rostered the tier 2 and tier 3 kids in 2 classrooms in first grade, and it's a push-in model. There are times where the tier 3 teacher takes the tier 3 kids out when needed, and they go back and forth.
So they're homogeneously grouped then for those classes?
Yes, for those classes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Thank you, Jeannie. I appreciate it. Larry. Board member questions, presentations. And those board goals that you presented are the ones that you're requesting about.
Yes, they're on the curriculum part of the agenda tonight.
Moving on, we have our first public comment session for agenda item. Make a motion, we have the public second. All in favor? Abstention. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on any item on the agenda? Seeing no one, I made a motion to close the first public comment session. Second. All in favor? Abstentions. All right, moving on to reports. I don't have anything specific to report, but I would like to mention on the topic of school security and school safety, we had a brief discussion regarding our incoming SRO. If I understood it correctly, people literally starting on the 12th of December. She starting on the 12th of December. Ironically, I was reading a couple news articles the other day surrounding the election. There's a lot of ballot referendums that were out, throughout the state for different measures. school safety measures, and unfortunately, based on the outcome of those elections, the communities did support those referendums in those cases. Hard to believe, so I'm happy that Franklin Township takes security, school safety as one of our top priorities. And with that, we'll be welcoming SRO senators. I don't have anything else. We've added an item to the agenda at the request of Mr. Betts, Superintendent Monthly Report. So Mr. Betts,
Thank you. Yeah, I added this not just so I can hear myself talk. I just really want to highlight the good things happening in this district, really, really briefly. Thank you, Jamie, for the presentations tonight, and to all of our teachers, because there's a lot of really good news in those reports, and we'll be sharing that with our staff and all three schools during faculty meetings soon. But congratulations to our staff as well. It's a challenge, and CUSAC really threw us all for a loop, but it looks like this district has recovered nicely. There's always room to grow. Things are definitely moving in the right direction. As Jason said, we'll be hiring the new SRO, start date 12th to 13th of December. We'll be replacing the boiler at the main road. It's apparently been an issue for a very long time. It's being held together with gum, I think, and some Scotch tape. Moving forward, installing the boiler over there. An issue that Stacy and her team had brought up, and I've been hearing from the principal since I started, the issue of not having enough substitutes here in Franklin Township. Every morning, I know what that's like as a principal, you get in and you have 5 people out and 2 substitutes. What do? Go to the teachers, and you give up your prep, pay you for that time. It's an inconvenience. I know people are always willing to step up and make a little more money, but if you're preparing for your classroom, that's an issue. You need that prep time. Sometimes I've covered them myself. I know our principals have done that as well. It's been an issue. So I looked into it. We use a subservice called ESS, and they were based in New Jersey. Previously called Source for Teachers. Now ESS is a larger national organization that supplies substitute teachers, paraprofessionals, and nurses to schools. It's weird when I call them because the gentleman that represents New Jersey was a student of mine when I was my first year principal about 100 years ago. I remember as a 7th grader with squeaky voices, and really tall and bad acne. But he's Bayshore now. It's nice to see him. He's going to give us a really nice plan on how we can reach out to the additional ESS members. We already use ESS, but at a very small scale. We're going to amp that up to a larger scale. Looking at his roster, we currently have between 20 and 40 substitutes that we try to call on. He's looked at his roster. There are over 600 potential substitutes in the Franklin Township immediate area. So we're going to try to make that move sometime in December. Not then, but when we come back from the break. It'll allow us to reach out to a lot more people with a lot of nice incentives to be substitute teachers here in Franklin Township. For instance, if I'm a substitute and I work 4 or 5 Fridays in a row, I may get a gift card from Wawa for $15. If I work days before holidays, there's an incentive to do that. Anyone on staff can recommend someone to be a substitute. And if this person signs up, that person gets $100. So there's a lot of great ways. They do electronic meetings with trying to bring people in. There's job fairs. They'll advertise Franklin Township on all of their social media accounts. So again, trying to shake the bushes a little bit to get more people in here to be substitutes. That'll solve their problems, solve the teachers' problems. Hopefully that will work out. And again, we're going to try to move that along quickly, but at least by the start of the new calendar year, January, that plan should be in place. A lot of good news happening here in Franklin Township, and I'll be brief. Halloween was a blast. All 3 schools, the kids had a great time. Staff members dressed up. A lot of parents were in with the parties, kids had a great time. It was a lot of fun. I know that can be the worst day of the school year, but it really was great. It really was a fun time. So thank you to the staff and to the principals for making that happen. I've been able to read in a bunch of classes. I put it out, and I've been in probably 10 classes. There's more to come. So thank you to the teachers that have invited me in to read to the classes. I love doing that. It's a lot of fun. And just a shout out to Mr. Pizzo from Janvier. I was in the office the other day. I looked out the window and I saw this man walking out of the school, followed by about 25 little kids that were evenly spaced apart. And they were following him. He looked like the Pied Piper. He had them stretched out along the swing sets. Again, about 5 feet apart. I don't know how he did that. The kids were not running all over, but they were spread out and they were doing jumping jacks. What is going on up there? I don't know what he's doing. He's not a gym teacher, right? He's a phys ed teacher. And then he gathered them into this small circle. They were all sitting down, and he was standing over them. And I saw him talking to them. And all of a sudden, a student would come up to him. He would give a high five, and the little child would run back and sit down. I'm like, what is he doing? I don't know what he's doing, but he is definitely in control. The kids were having a good time. And he told me later, after I sent him an email, that they were doing some kind of kinesthetic type of science experiment. But the main thing is he had them just, in awe. And I see that happening in so many classrooms around this district. I know the test scores define a school district sometimes. What really helps define this district, people like Mr. Pizzo and the rest of the staff members and our administration, because kids are walking our hallways and they are happy. They don't know me. I'm just like Captain Kirk at Halloween. They're engaging with me. They're fun. One little girl was dressed like Randy Macho Man Savage, a professional wrestler. And I said to her, do you know who that is? And she said, no, my dad made me dress up like him. And like, it was so funny. I mean, these kids are adorable. We've got great staff. We've got great kids. It's really a great district. And I'm really proud to be here. So with that, I end my remarks.
Thank you.
Your report out of Scooby-Doo and happening?
Oh, I have them here, I can show them.
Oh, website.
Yeah, someone was dressed as Scooby-Doo and was also doing this stuff when he was taking pictures, right? He would be right to character. It was great, it was a great day.
Mr. Shanklin, follow that.
Well, I just hate to follow that. Good luck and prosper there. I enjoyed the convention so much that I left early, but I did go to 2 pretty good workshops. The first one was teacher retention and how to bring teachers in, retain them. Sat for half an hour looking at statistics, and it was just ridiculous because we're living it. We know what the problems are. And then they went into just like people in the audience just venting about the problem of the teacher shortage and how they have to come up with creative ways to bring teachers in and to maintain that good group of teachers and retain the group. And it was the state department did it. The State Department of Ed facilitated it. It had 0 suggestions because everybody kept saying, well, I have to do this. A science teacher had to put them on step 10 just to get them in the door, and how they lose them to the next. So it is a statewide problem. And these were people from all over the north. There were people from right outside of the Princeton area. And I guess that's why sometimes I get a little flustered when I hear that sometimes we aren't doing great because we lose teachers and we have, teachers leaving. Well, everybody's in the same boat. So if nothing else, it opened my eyes to that. And also, I talked to Mr. Betts about this. Some creative ways of bringing people in and retaining them that they have. But I don't know how we can be able to do it. And also the legislative meeting I went to, I think Trish, you were there also. I left after a while because it wasn't what I was expecting it to be, but it was pre-election, so I mean, they were up for a seat. But right now, there's nothing going on in the county that I'm aware of until probably January. So, whoever's here next time, whoever takes this New Jersey School Board Association position can fill you in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Is there any BOE liaison reports? Typically, yeah, so this is Michael's role. Unfortunately, she's out of town this evening. Not hearing anything, to move on to our minutes from October the 16th, 2024. Has everyone had the opportunity to review them? If there's no changes, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as listed. Do I have a second? All in favor? Human resources. Any revisions or no changes?
We may be looking at number 7, upping the substitute pay rates. I was presented with information from ESS comparing all the districts in the county and surrounding counties. They range from $106 a day to $190 a day. Probably candidates in those types of districts. We're somewhere in between. We have a rolling rate starting at, I believe it's 110 going to 125. So we kind of fall in the middle, but once we have additional conversations with ESS, we'll recommend any kind of change in those pay rates if any. Just to keep people, more people here in Franklin County.
But I was going to say, I think that's been a topic of discussion in the board since I've been here. I don't know how many years that is, but at least 7. So I know Michelle's going to give credit to Dawn Collins on that. She's one of our prior board members. But just as a help note that that's an ongoing conversation.
Well, no, we were unaware, I think in the beginning, that what we pay our teachers isn't really what we pay. We pay sort of, well, ESS now a certain amount of money, and I don't know if that's gone up since, but I'm sure we'll want to take a look at those figures if and when they feel we should change the amount.
Are there any other questions on human resources? Hearing none, I make a motion to approve human resources items G1 through G12 as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a second? Any other comments? If not, call the roll, please, sir.
Cunningham?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Star?
Yes.
Checkley?
Yes.
Gray?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, education, right?
Yeah, no changes there. I just want to highlight, asking for approval of the district improvement plan for QSAC from last year. All know that the QSAC comes in as a compliance type of assessment that the county does in each of the school districts every 2 to 3 years. We fell short in one of the areas of curriculum instruction, mostly because of the low test scores from 2 years ago. Jamie and her staff put together a did attach their 4-year review, prove that and submit it back to the state. That's basically what Jamie covered tonight and what we're doing in our classrooms to improve those systems.
I just had a question on where we are, because I know in the DIP, it was mentioned the new possible program, ELA program. Where are we in that process?
I know Jamie's working with the staff on that. Jamie, want to do a quick update on
Yeah.
approving a new ELA program?
Yeah, we have an ELA committee consisting of just teachers, special ed, basic skills, gen ed for the whole district. We're actually taking a look at 3 different programs in like the K to 4 and 2 different ones for 5th and 6th. We've had people coming in giving presentations. We're settling on the rubric right now on how we're analyzing those programs, and I'm setting up meetings with teachers in other districts that are using these programs so our teachers can have conversations with them.
Are we looking to pilot any of these since we weren't able to do that last time?
We might be. Yeah, we'll take a look and see what the conversation, how the conversation goes with the committee and what they would like to do.
Jamie and I talked about this today. We both believe, I certainly believe that our teachers should go out and talk to the teachers and see the teachers teaching these programs in other districts. And spend a day in other districts to see, hear from the teachers firsthand the pros and cons of these programs. best way to assess the program?
Actually, I think the best way is to pilot, because you really don't know the program until you have to use the materials, you have to plan with the program.
Eventually, yeah, absolutely.
Because we
To
weren't able
decide
to,
which one.
we didn't do that last time, and found that it came up short. If we can pilot, I think that's the best way for our teachers to figure out whether or not it's going to work in Franklin. Because it might work in Washington Township, or it might work in Vineland, but it might not work here.
Sure.
Jamie, what's the projected timeline to get this established? Like,
By March. By March of this year to choose the one that we're going to pilot or what we're going to do with it.
okay, thanks.
Yep.
And the only other question I had for the DIP is I know curriculum is where we had some issues, but also we did not do very well on operations. So I had emailed Brian and asked why we there were 1A, 1B, 3B, and 7, we got no points because of late submissions of documentation to the state. And obviously Brian not being here really wasn't able to explain as to why that happened. So I'm wondering who, like the report we got today, the HIP, was supposed to be submitted on 10th grade. So it's almost over a month late. So I'm wondering why some of these procedural things are not being submitted in a timely manner. And who's responsible?
Yeah, ultimately, it's my responsibility.
Okay, so it would have been superintendent, it would have been our previous
Ultimately, it's the
superintendent.
superintendent's responsibility, and we'll tighten that up. CUSAC, it says quality, it's really compliance. Those things that weren't submitted, there's nothing about quality of any good. It's more of a.
Right, I understand that, but
we'll make
we
sure
also
we
understand it
tighten
has to be
this up.
done, right? It has to be done, has to be done. Unfortunately, the state is the way the state is, and they're gonna ding us if we don't do what we need to do, like comply.
So we'll take that.
Any other questions regarding education items? Hearing none, I'll make a motion to approve education items H1 through H7 as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a second? If there's no other comments, I'll be called roll, please, Mary.
Wilson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Chiguini?
Yes.
Cunningham?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Motion carries.
What would otherwise have been the superintendent's area, district information. We have a lot of numbers. Any comments from the supervisors? Everyone's had an opportunity to do it. Do you have any comments? Not make a motion to approve district information items I-1 through I-7 as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a second?
Second.
If there's no other comments, questions, call roll, please, Mary.
Doyle?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Starr?
Yes.
Chiguini?
Yes.
Cunningham?
Yes.
Grant?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Operations first.
Yeah, everything was as usual. I did add a claims bill list earlier today. It's just some recurring payments, like $2,000. There, you say you had a question?
No, well, I noticed that there was none on the list, so
Yeah, take your time.
I did check it, just a few minutes ago, but I didn't go over it, but.
Ironically, I do have a question. I see there's a bill for a boiler replacement design. I'm assuming that's our architect.
Correct, that was in conjunction with the SBA grant.
And that's part of what you're working on, these replacements, correct?
It was, when we were going around the SBA grants, we're trying to do the record install, at least for main road, given the timeline that we need to press on. That may, like I said, be a non-expense in the future.
Will we at least able to somewhat utilize that design?
Yes, yes, especially for main roads, since we have to kind of push that along. Those designs were definitely.
That's my only question.
Seeing no other questions, moving on, items 2, 3, and 4 are for the month of September 2024. 10 students. We don't have student ID numbers for them because they are charter school students. Item number 11 is none. Item 12 is a ratifying affirm for TFA meeting that occurred.
Can I just ask a question about that? That was submitted after our board meeting on the 16th and approved and the meeting held. Like, is there any liability to check if that meeting occurs and we haven't approved that use of facilities?
I believe there is contractual language that city use of facilities are formality, I think we have to check the
Okay.
language in the like negotiation.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, we would like to do it in advance.
Right.
Put everything up, but we can't agree to do it on that, so.
Okay.
Item number 13 is a yearly comprehensive maintenance plan, 24-25 submission. Also comes with the F1 and the detailed resolution in the attachment. And then item number 14 is just a purchasing co-op. The Camden County Educational Services Commission resolution. It's in the public content as well as the administrative content of the
And that's just to participate in the cooperative person.
Correct.
I have a question, item 10. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. The first item in the spreadsheet is a contract for us to engage in services of Deptford Township, is that correct?
Yes, so Deptford Township is the host district, which means they handle the coordination of the route, and they pay their drivers to run the route, and they're picking up our students who are attending Yale Multi.
Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
Any other questions?
Yes, I have, for number, it's kind of more of a comment than a question. Number 9. Taking a look at this, and if there was something else at the $106,000 to transport a kid for the year of Banbridge. I've read, and I've also heard at the conference a couple times, that there is legislation possibly, and I'm sure you know more about this, Trish, but I don't know, of allowing like small, like vans to transport kids, and that the bus drivers don't maybe have to have that CDL.
Correct.
They still have to be trained in all of the, bus driver safety, efficiency, and all that. Has that gone anywhere? Is that?
I believe it's slated to be enacted or eligible to actually have employees on the district level in July of 2025.
I mean, so it sounds like that would be a huge cost savings. I mean, in my opinion, when I'm looking at $106 grand, that's just not a bus driver's salary.
Correct.
That includes everything, the big bus and everything that goes with it, right?
Correct. So that is a total for the one student that is added to an existing route. So that's the total route for multiple students, not just one student.
It's still $500 a day.
We have seen those costs, that are that much for one student.
Because I think people are saying like that.
It just depends on the potential needs of the student on the
Right.
bus.
Oh, yeah,
or the
and who you
vehicle.
need, like,
Correct.
but
Correct.
it may open up and free up some bus driver salaries, or I don't even know what the word is.
Right, but if you're still going to need a person, you're still going
Oh,
to
yeah,
need a
yeah.
resource to impact driving the district vehicle. So it does,
It just
again,
went along with kind of the teacher shortage, the bus driver shortage, all that kind of.
it's less red tape for someone who is interested in driving but doesn't want to go through the whole
So we'll see
training approval that way to be able to look at drive a district vehicle with a student or students on it. So it could potentially help out with some local transportation. So yeah, we will be looking into that.
So you're thinking like maybe another, at the end of this fiscal year, maybe?
I believe if that, I guess if it's voted, I'm not sure where it is on the
And
assembly or the state.
I didn't catch that either.
Yours, but yes, last I saw, I think they were looking to it in July of 2025.
Thank you.
happen to be within our jurisdiction, we have to provide transportation. We cannot pay guaranteed enrollment. So Delsey does do a run because they have students from their districts. Creativity Collaboratory, I believe, is 5th through 8th.
So that one there, that's for all, which is 11, 7, 7.
Yep.
What is the age limit on that?
1177 per student, great.
This contract here is for one student or for all?
It's for 10 students. I'm not sure why the student ID numbers, I mean, like I said, we don't have student ID numbers, the student never actually registered with the district. But yeah, we should have put 10 students.
That's the 11-7, that's not what the parent gets.
No, the parent would get $1,177 per adult.
Right.
Okay.
And there's no updates on this since our executive session, like that, right?
No.
Any other questions on operations? Hearing none, I make a motion to approve operations items J1 through J14 as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a second? Any comments? Tricia, call the roll.
Smith?
Yes.
Starr? Yes. Checkley?
Yes.
Cunningham?
Yes.
Doyle?
Yes.
Wilson?
Yes, but I'm going to be on the safe side of abstaining. That'd be correct.
Jeff, you're rolling on that? Or it's not a specific contract or anything like that.
Okay, I didn't know if it was reference.
No, that's not.
Oh, okay, then,
No. That's fine, thank you for thinking. Yeah, yeah. And Mr. Grant?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Whole business, we have standing items here. Anybody have anything before roll?
I'm just wanting to see, I know usually we have our, new board orientation in district, are we going to have that in December?
Yes, I've actually reached out to Mr.
Okay.
Betts, spoke to him about that, let the board, especially that will be discussed with her, coordinate with her source sector for anything orientation. I'm sorry, so board goals, yearly planning calendar, the feasibility study, regionalization, anybody have any comments on any of those? I will just make a quick comment on item 3, the feasibility study, and then there's members of the public, which have been following that closely. As of right now, based on the advice of the council, we will not be further discussing that matter until the new board is seated in January. So we'll take an action taken regarding the regionalization until January at the earliest. New business, we discussed in executive session revising our meeting agendas to do the executive sessions prior to starting our regular board meeting at 7 p.m. hopefully, and an opportunity to kind of streamline how things have been working. So, are there any questions on how we're going to move forward with that procedure, planning board members? And brings us to our second public comment portion. Make a motion to move to the public. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Anyone from the public wish to comment on any items? Seeing no one, make a motion to close the public comment. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Next scheduled meeting we have is December the 16th, 6 p.m. We start our regular meeting at 7 p.m. We're scheduled. We wish everyone a good Thanksgiving, healthy and happy Thanksgiving. See everyone in December. With that, next motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Everybody.